The opinions and views expressed by individuals during this broadcast are their own and may not be the opinions of this network, their group, or other organization they may be involved with.
I'm looking at myself, reflections of my mind. It's just the kind of day to leave myself behind. So gently swaying through the fairyland of love. If you'll just come with me, you'll see the beauty of Tuesday evening news. Tuesday evening news.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Psychedelic Reporters for this Tuesday, the 28th episode. I believe it's 180 here on NOK Network, the video news podcast focused on psychedelic medicine being reported in mainstream media. Shout out to the guys in Dead Ringer. Woo! From Kirkland Lake, Ontario, for the awesome intro track, originally recorded by the Moody Blues, with some customized changes for our show. I am joined by my amazing joint host, Tara Simpson, along with the one and only Bufo Various, who has chosen all of our stories for us. Hello, Tara.
Well, hello, hobbies, and hello, everyone. It's good to be back after a little hiatus. I have, chaos in my life. But I'd like to take a minute to introduce Bufo. He's our Sonoran desert toad, or Colorado mud toad. Did you know he emits DMT from his skin? And while that sounds like fun, park rangers would like to remind everyone, please don't lick that toad.
Don't lick the toad. And we read last week why you should not lick the toad. You won't know the doses you're getting, and it's usually a toxic without being secreted correctly. Is that
Absolutely.
a thing?
Not to mention, you're probably going to freak that toad right out.
Right. You get a little pee mixed in with your DMT.
Trippy.
Right. Well, speaking about bodily functions and health, we're gonna jump right into our first article from El Paso Science section, and it is English.elpas.com. Liliana Galindo, psychiatrist, there is a peak in psychosis among women around menopause, which isn't talked about much due to stigma. The psychedelic drug specialist at the University Cambridge discussed the potential of these drugs to treat mental illness. And it says she's the leader of the Cambridge Psychedelic Research Group at the illustrious College of Physicians of Madrid, and written by Daniel Mediavilla.
Yeah, this is an interesting article. Luciana Galindo, 40, compares psychedelic therapies for mental health to surgery. It's a paradigm shift before we used to administer daily medication, focus on treating symptoms that sometimes cause side effects and are expected to be taken for years. This type of therapy requires a significant initial investment because, in addition to the medication, you need a therapist, a psychiatrist, and a nurse, all working together, but over a short period, maybe about 3 months to provide intensive treatment that seeks to address the root cause of the illness. Gilando's experience shows that the effort is worth it. In many cases, it's complete improvement, she says. Galindo continues the analogy. In surgery, anesthesia is used to tolerate the physical pain. The surgeon intervenes and cleans the wound, and then the body heals. Here, we use a substance to open and tolerate the emotional pain, to see the world, or to see the wound, process it, and then the person continues to improve, like in a post-operative period. Psychedelic drugs are back in fashion in medicine after decades of being sidelined due to the bad reputation and the illegality brought about their recreational use and association with counterculture. In 2019, the use of esketamine, an analog of ketamine, was approved to treat severe depression, and in recent years, a growing number of studies have shown the potential of MDMA or ecstasy for post-traumatic stress disorder, and psilocybin, the active ingredient in hallucinogenic mushrooms for depression. Galindo, who is an assistant professor of psychiatry at the University of Cambridge, a psychiatrist at the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough NHS Foundation Trust, and founder of the Cambridge Psychedelic Research Group, visited Madrid a few days ago to participate in a symposium, a forum that promotes scientific and ethical progress in mental health, neuroscience, and psychedelic research. The researcher, who began her career in Spain alongside Maggie Ferre and Victor Perez Sola at the Hospital del Mar in Barcelona, speaks about substances that represent a paradigm shift in the pharmacological treatment of mental health, and in the very understanding of the mind, but which will also require a new way of designing studies to measure their true effectiveness. Question: what does the fact that many of these substances have been used for fun affect expectations about them or the possibilities of using them?
Answer is humans have used substances as tools to achieve different states of consciousness for thousands of years. In America, many indigenous communities have used psychedelic substances such as ayahuasca. Some people use them for spiritual reasons and others for recreational reasons. But the medical model has fundamental differences. It is done in a supervised manner with substance whose properties are precisely known in the right amount, because we already know that the dose makes the poison, or in this case, the remedy.
Yeah, how does it work?
Well, in general, the person must have 3 types of sessions. It's preparatory sessions in which they meet with the therapist, establish a series of goals, and learn about the person's past in order to understand the context and be able to make decisions. Information should also be provided on what do if the patient feels anxious or has memories what caused the significant distress. During these preparation sessions, they can practice exercise to calm themselves during these movements. After these preparation sessions comes the session in which the substance is administered, which must happen in the company of a therapist. This can't be just any therapist, but someone trained in these interventions, which are quite different from those of conventional psychotherapy. Here, the therapist does not intervene as much as in the other conventional sessions. They're more like a co-pilot, supporting the person who is the one who decides the path to take. In the case of the post-traumatic stress disorder, for example, patient is helped to connect with those traumatic memories, to revisit, process them, and that is something the person does alone. And after the session comes the integration sessions, which are usually done the day after. These sessions are key because with psychedelics, it's most shown in that of the reasons they work in neuroplasticity. They can create changes at the inflammatory and neuronal levels and even in dendritic connections. And these changes appear to be in key memory reconsolidation. It's important to take advantage of the window of greater neuroplasticity after taking the substance so that the person can process what happened during the 4, 6, or more hours. She's really smart when she writes this. Depending on the substance that the experience may have lasted, in order to have sense of what happened, in this case, also with the support of therapists. Wow.
Yeah. What do these substances do in the brain to give them these potential beneficial effects?
In the case of pathogens like MDMA, they have structures that are sometimes quite similar to those of serotonin or dopamine. On the other hand, they increase serotonin and dopamine and norepinephrine and produce feelings of well-being and connection. But they also seem to produce an increase in oxytocin. And this oxytocin, which is the attachment molecule, plays a very important role in reprocessing of traumatic experiences. If you think about oxytocin, one of the time it's secreted a lot is with around childbirth and during breastfeeding when the whole bonding process takes place. But it also helps overcome many of the memories and traumas surrounding labor and birth. It can be traumatic at times, but we still do it more than once, twice, or 3 times. There's a point in the reconciliation of memories where oxytocin plays an important role.
Mm-hmm. What about classic psychedelics like psilocybin?
Well, the specific action is one of the serotonin receptors, which is 5-HT2A. This serotonergic action changes our brain connections, performing a kind of reset to previous cognitive patterns. There are many mental illnesses that involve rigid cognitive patterns, rumination, when we feel anxious and go over the same thing in circles. In depression, we have an idea or a conviction that something is wrong, circular thoughts that are difficult to escape. We also see this as an obsessive compulsive disorder or eating disorders with very circular beliefs about the body. These substances to reset these ideas and changes are seen fairly quickly, like after psilocybin sessions. Their broader therapeutic range have been observed. It has shown significant improvements in treatment-resistant depression and even in OCD eating disorders. There are preliminary evidence suggesting they can improve.
Yeah. If psychedelics facilitate plasticity in the brain, just as they help to undo the rigid thought patterns that cause depression, can they also create new problems?
Of course, this needs to be investigated. Side effects have been seen, especially when doses are not supervised or the setting is not appropriate. In controlled settings, it seems safe, but we need to better understand what doses and for whom and for how. Now the psychedelics are becoming more accepted. Oh, my bad. That's you. That's not me. That's me. Yeah, my bad.
That's okay.
I went on a roll, but I can feel it.
Now that psychedelics are becoming more accepted, even trendy, there's sometimes a perception that they're harmless. What risks need to be monitored with these substances?
They're not harmless, but neither are psychedelics nor any treatment. Um, They're not harmless, but neither are psychedelics nor any treatment. It all depends on the dose, who takes it, and how it's taken. The biggest danger, and what has given many of these substances a bad reputation, is that they've existed in an illegal market. Ooh, excuse me, where people believe they're taking things they're not. That's why in clinical settings, the first monitored is the dose. There's no option to increase it because it feels good. And of course, the fact that not all psychedelics are good for everything and everyone, even though they have enormous therapeutic potential. Much of the focus of the research is now trying to understand how, of all the substances that appear to have therapeutic potential, which types of people will benefit and which won't. We need to understand the contradictions of which people might benefit, for example, from therapy with MDMA, psilocybin, or ayahuasca. They're completely different. Part of the research is trying to understand how the effects of substances change his personal history and illness we're treating, even family history of the other members who have mental illnesses and previously had adverse reactions to substances of this type.
Yeah. Again, they are all very different substances. So one isn't necessarily good for somebody who has certain conditions versus the other, right? So the next question is, you also work on psychosis, on detecting in advance those at risk to prevent or reduce its effects.
Psychosis refers to when someone experiences changes in their perception of reality. A person begins to have an idea that becomes so strong that, in a way, our brain tries to process all the information it receives, a confirmation of that idea, or tries to associate it with that idea and relate unrelated things. And suddenly, it is as if that idea steals all our energy, all our intention in life. That belief begins the most important thing. It's usually associated with a very strong fear of what we call paranoia. There are very different types of content. The person may believe they're being followed. They may have a power, a superpower, or they're on a mission, but suddenly they begin to see that everything is connected to that idea. Whether it's I'm being followed, my neighbor is an alien, or whatever that idea may be. There are what we call delusions. Separately, other people may experience what we call hallucinations. The most common is hearing voices or things that aren't there. Some people may see things, but this is less common. In addition, changes, exception, and information processing, they are accompanied by enormous fear.
Yeah. What else is known?
In most cases, we begin before age 20 and is more common in men. We also know there's a second peak of psychosis presentation that usually occurs in women around hormonal changes during menopause. It isn't about much. There's still a stigma attached to it, but it exists. We know that this when people experience these changes, the most important thing is to be able to detect them early. At the moment, an inflammatory process is creating changes in the brain that can lead to a long-term cognitive or memory change.
Can you intervene?
Worldwide, the first early intervention model was developed in Australia. For at least 3 years, the person will be seen frequently, almost weekly, by doctors, psychologists, occupational therapists. They work with the family, the school, the workplace. Everything is focused on helping the person return to their life as it became before ill. One is seen as that if the change is achieved in the first 3 years, and above all, importantly, if the person manages to recognize this episode as something abnormal, understand why it's better to continue treatment, detect early symptoms of relapse. Each person has their own and return to the previous functioning. The disease can be prevented from deteriorating in the medium or long term. We used to believe there is no way to stop progression of psychosis or that everyone would necessarily end up severe deteriorated on a mental hospital. We know that when it's not that case, but we must act early and work hard on treatment and education for the individual and their family. Huh.
Interesting.
So, everybody interviews different. And I see if you sat down with this big head lady from like this college, that you and Kim would have another set of like questions for her and different. And I like this. This is nice because it covers, as a reporter, a journalist that's putting this in a paper that their country is going to read and other countries are going to read. It kind of gives the whole everything together in her views.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a good article. I have lots of questions, but I don't have the author, so.
Right. Kim, fuck, I know who you're writing. Well, our next article actually hits home. Us puppets have grown to love the state of Louisiana, and we live here. And we call this home. And so this comes out of myarchmiss.com, and it states, it's basically KTVE TV. NBC 10 News today, Louisiana lawmakers look into psychedelic therapy for mental health issues. And this is written by Sky Doty in Monroe, Louisiana.
Yeah, Louisiana lawmakers are investigating the potential use of psychedelic drugs to address mental health issues, particularly for veterans dealing with trauma and depression. The task force, led by Republican State Senator Patrick McMath, is examining whether substances like psilocybin and LSD, which have historically been stigmatized, could offer therapeutic benefits. It's time to explore every safe and effective option, said McMath, emphasizing the need for thorough research and monitoring of these treatments. Research suggests that psychedelics, despite their controversial reputation, may have more positive effects on mental health than previously thought. The National Institute of Health acknowledges the public's perception of psychedelics is changing, although there are still concerns about the potential negative effects, such as addiction, self-harm, or overdose.
McGath argues that the potential benefits for veterans suffering from the trauma and depression warrant further investigation into whether the advantage of psychedelic treatment outweighs the risks. As the task force continues this work, the debate over the use of psychedelics in mental health treatment remains a complex issue, balancing potential therapeutical benefits against possible risks. For more, all the rest is just kind of cover your ass shit. But this is a good article, and
he's absolutely right. In today's world, whether you're in Louisiana or you're here somewhere in Canada, mental health illness is absolutely out of control. And people aren't getting better with our current treatment protocols that doctors are prescribing that you go to the pharmacy to pick up. There is a lack worldwide of trained therapists to help people deal with these things. So looking at psychedelics absolutely makes sense. If it's not going to cause more harm and it may actually help people, why are we not making this available for those people?
Yeah. I knew it would be a matter of time. Texas, right next door. Right next door. They just got all these millions of dollars of private money, not state funded, private money, and started a program.
That's amazing. Right.
You know, so I mean,
you gotta start somewhere. And if it takes grassroots people like myself and people, you know, throughout the world that are behind the scenes trying to help patients with this type of information, then so be it. I'd love to see treatment centers offer this, you know, when you walk through the door rather than here's a prescription for a pill, you know, but we're not there yet. But I'd like to see that worldwide. If you want to try this therapy, it's available, it's covered, it's, you know, it's not going to break your bank account to do it. Because again, therapy isn't cheap, whether you go see a counselor and take pharmaceutical meds or whatever, but we need to make it accessible enough for everybody.
I can see Mel trying to get on the task force board and being like, hey, I'm a mushroom. I want to help.
Right.
Yeah. So our next article comes out of TempleNews.com. Temple News is the watchdog for Temple University since 1921. The new student-run organization fosters a vibrant community in psychedelic science. A senior health profession student created the Psychedelic Sciences Collective, a club around exploration and ethnical engagement with psychedelics this year. Let's see who wrote this. Oh, it doesn't state.
Yeah, the picture though I think was Maria Meza Royan. So maybe oh no, Samuel Carr. It is there. It's up there. I see it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there it is. Samuel Carr. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So during Gavin Bowman's summer internship in a lab studying stem cells, neuroscience, and psychoactive compounds, he became entranced by how psychedelics interact with the human brain. He then turned to Temple in the fall. He wanted to show other people what he learned. Bowman created the Psychedelic Science Collective this year, a student club where people visualize neuroscience and discuss the science behind altered states. I just wanted to create a space for people who are like-minded and thirsty for knowledge to come together, socialize, and work together to make the world a better place, a little bit at a time, he said. A senior health professions major, as I explored psychedelic research, I started hearing about it, going to conventions and meeting people. It became clear that neuroscience made sense for me. The club's objective is to provide accessible, accurate, science-based information to create an environment for students who are interested in learning about how psychedelic substances interact with the human body. And they meet Thursdays in Ritter Hall for group discussions, exploration of podcasts, philosophy workshops, and history related to psychedelic science, neuroscience, and therapy models. The use of psychedelics became scrutinized during Richard Nixon's presidency, which pushed policies criminalizing psychedelics and caused the research to be halted until the early 2000s. Despite the destigmatization of its use, scientists have only begun learning and discovering about their health benefits. This is a good starting point for anyone who doesn't understand the basics of psychedelics, said Nico Bezaris, a graduate
Bezanis, I think.
There you go. A graduate student studying social and behavioral science. I saw a poster in Pearson and decided to come. PSC got the word out through hands-on techniques such as flyers, posters, handouts, or just having conversations with students. Wow, that's really cool.
Oh shit! There we are. Knowing the stigma that has grown around the use of psychedelics, which depicts the drugs and dangerous substances posing a risk of people's physical and mental health, Bowman encouraged everyone to come to the PSC with an open mind. The club has 10 to 15 recurring members, which Bowman never anticipated when he started the group. The turnout is definitely more than I expected, Bowman said. It's nice to know that there is a good number of people interested in this. It's nice to know that we have the support that we can keep growing. The organization has begun to catch the eyes of people not within the student body. Shula Patton, a professor of chemistry, got involved with PSC after reading works with Michael Pollan, a journalist and professor from Harvard who researched plant-based chemistry. He was curious about the club's discussions on the relationship between psychoactive plants and humans. Patton was able to listen to the people discuss unlocking awareness of the ego through psychedelics and give insight on the topic. I think it's great, everyone, getting the word out with some things, and I support curiosity in all its safe respects, Patton said. There is a big stigma about psychedelics that is preventing necessity research because it's shown to be very effective in medical treatment. There has been a substantial rise in literature on psychedelics indicating the potential resurgence of interest in psychedelic substances, according to September 2024 study from Science Direct on psychedelics for depression treatment. Awesome. You want to read the last 3 paragraphs?
Yeah, I know in terms of the scientific community, it's been ramping up exponentially in the last 10 to 15 years, Bowman said. There's a large body of people into it, a lot of good and hardworking people out there looking into this. The club will further explore how to better understand how a better understanding of scientific research can bring good to the world and continue to discuss the brain's ability to recognize deeper value in connections. Bowman is considering relocating to a larger space like an auditorium for future meetings. Nobody chooses to be here, Bowman said. We're here. We are all the same thing. Oh, we all want the same thing, to suffer less and have a better life. And because of that, we can all come together to decrease suffering and spread love.
I like it.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool that he started just like a club of people interested in, putting their thoughts together and, throwing some ideas around about how psychedelics and neuroscience and all of this stuff works together. Because that's science, right? Like that's how things progress and research happens. It takes sometimes somebody else's idea to spark an idea with this person, and then they can come up with a plan for a study or, let's see if that holds true, right? So
Right.
Having those conversations are important, even just at a student level, because that's how we discover new things.
I love it. I love it. And it's you're curious. You're in chemistry. You're in that type of field. Some of them just like are curious for own self like exploration. Yeah. I love it. That's better than walking down to John's house and being like, "Hey, John, I want a trip." Hey, I took that shit. I took 5 grams of motherfucking moonshine, buddy. Woo!
Yeah, it sound like this way. Consuming psychedelics at these meetings. It sounds like they're just a bunch of maybe psychedelic individuals who have had experiences, who want to get together and discuss their adventures and what that means, and right. That's kind of cool.
I bet it's great. Now it's medication time.
That's right, folks. It's time to pay some bills. So stay tuned for a word from some of our sponsors. And then we'll return with more articles UFOs chosen making mainstream media news.
Back in 4 minutes and 20 seconds here on Psychedelic Reporters on NOK Network.
Hey, hi, my name is John Mark, aka Sublimator Warrior, and I would like to welcome you to Smoke Signal in Tyendinaga.
One dab make your whole dome drip sweat. One dab make the homies all dip set.
Smoke Signals, Tyendinaga.
Smoke Signals, Tyendinaga.
Smoke Signals, Tyendinaga.
Ooey, ooey, gooey, that's a sticky dab. Sticky dab. Might just have to put this one on Instagram.
Smoke Signals, Tyendinaga.
Hold it in, feel it in your wrist.
Smoke Signals, Tyendinaga.
Check us out in Tyendinaga. 55 Highway 49 in Tyendinaga. It's on the res, and we're open from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week.
Tune in daily to NOK's diverse podcasting lineup. Ganja News Update, Mondays at 8 p.m. Eastern with Tara Simpson and Ron McNabb. Wake Up with the Waniac, Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific with Tombstoner Wayne Cruz. Pro 420, Tuesdays, 4 p.m. Eastern with the Forgetful Stoner Ron McNabb. Psychedelic Reporters, Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern with Hobbies Puppets and Tara Simpson. Peace, News and Views, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern with Kim Cooper and Sir Steve-O. Open Your Eye, Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern with Kim Cooper and Tara Simpson. Followed by Thursday Night Vibes, 9:15 Eastern with Master and Mama Rochi. Cannabis and Crime, Sundays at 8 p.m. Eastern with Christine Terra from Machete Cat Productions. The IWK 710 Daily Set airs nightly, 7 days a week, with international rotating joint host, 7 p.m. Eastern. Rise and shine, it's marijuana time. Wake and bake with Ron McNabb at 7 a.m. Eastern, 7 days a week. Thanks for tuning in to all the podcasting on NOK Network.
And we're back from our medication session live on Psychedelic Reporters here on NOK Network.
And we have another set of stories coming at you from the realm of psychedelic medicine. So let's get at it. So let's see here. Oh, yeah. Okay. So this comes from BBC. I like it when they come from BBC. So this comes from BBC. And I am melting Help Me, the 30-year-old drug website that transformed psychedelic research. And this is written by Tamlin May.
Yeah. 30 years ago, drug users flocked to a website called Erowid, to describe experiences on everything from Advil to LSD. Today, it's become a goldmine for researchers and governments. I'm melting. Help me. This is not only an unusual plea for assistance, it's also the title of a trip report. One person's experience with the powerful dissociative drug called phencylamine, also known as PCP. Okay. All right. Not one I'm familiar with. I never tried it. So, and it's just one of many thousands of mind-bending anecdotes filed to Erowid, a website that, since the early days of the internet, has built one of the world's most influential records of drug use and its effects. This marks the 30th anniversary of the Scrappy Grassroots Project, which hosts data on everything from caffeine to cannabis to paracetamol, also known as Tylenol, to heroin, like a Wikipedia on all things pharmaceutical. Users post information about purifying street drugs, rolling joints, and the health implications of drug misuse. Visitors to the site can find information about drug toxicology and interactions between chemicals. They can even wade through the archives of Albert Hofmann, the Swiss chemist who first synthesized LSD. But perhaps the most intriguing of them all are the 45,000 plus trip reports in the Experience Vault. These hallucinatory tales, with titles such as "Tripping Alone on 1.5 grams from hell," "The Weekend at the Edge of the Universe," and "The Thumbprint," where unfortunate souls lose their mind on a drug related to LSD called ALLAD. Do not just make for an ideal internet fodder. They have become vital for academic research, especially for esoteric and illegal substances where clinical data does not exist or it's challenging to obtain. People publishing their personal experiences and experimenting outside the legal and academic bubble has led to the science in many ways, said David Luke, Associate Professor of Psychology at the University of Greenwich in the UK, which studies psychedelics and has conducted clinical trials using microdoses of LSD. There was so little published academic research and so few resources for exploring the use of psychoactive drugs that Erowid was invaluable for research to understand issues around safety and experiences. Today, the social stigma around some types of drug use has softened to the point that ayahuasca ceremonies, mushrooms, and ketamine have become a fixture in some corners of the business world. While these substances are still illegal in many countries, a growing number of places are choosing to decriminalize drugs that were previously subject to extensive crackdowns. In recent years, psychedelics have also gathered renewed interest from the scientific community as potential approach for treating conditions such as post-traumatic stress disorder. Their use, however, remains controversial, and in some places, unregulated therapeutic use of these drugs has led to tragedy. Back in 1995, when Erowid was founded, psychedelics were very much underground. This was a hostile time for drug reform, just over a decade since U.S. President Ronald Reagan had expanded the war on drugs. Psychedelics were mostly of interest to the counterculture community of self-styled psychonauts, willing human guinea pigs who with chemical aid, dived into their own psyche and reported the results. Aside from a handful of in-person conferences here and there, organized research slowed to a halt, largely due to the tight regulations that made getting approval for studies involving controlled substances difficult. Wow.
Yeah, it was around this time that Earth, Wind, and Fire, the pseudonyms of two recent graduates of New College in Florida and Liberal Arts College in Sarasota, U.S., noticed a huge information gap. There was simply no trusted, simple repository where researchers or amateur professional could find a reliable data of psychoactive substances. The internet had an opportunity to change that, and starting as a hobby project until its founders went full-time years later, Arrowwood was born. Earth Fire declined to comment for this story. Arrowwood was the computer-literate, web-literate group that wanted to mine the enormous amount of information that was being gathered in the underground about old drugs. And new drugs has been invented, says Rick Doblin, the founder of Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Maps, a nonprofit based in the U.S. that advocates for illegal pathways to psychedelics. Earth and Wind wanted to make this information public and shareable, a novel in that era, adds Doblin, who also attended the new college where Arrowwood's co-founders were students. It was really revolutionary and courageous, he says. They used digital technology and the early internet to create a space for something that didn't exist before. And the space itself changed psychedelic culture dramatically. Adds Eric Davis, an author who has written extensively about psychedelic counterculture. And friend to the founders, Arrowwood created an environment for people to connect and share information, but also for younger people, experimenting for the time to the equivalent of the older brother who's already into the scene. Arrowwood really represents the spirit of devoted data nerd, a librarian with a love dry, organized, clear information on the hand, but also this sense of courage and creating an inventive space for cultural. Oh, that's a quote. That's what the hell. Over time, says Davis, the website of a significant impact on shifting psychedelics verified mind-altering drugs to potential therapeutics that could transform the field of mental health. While there are some of the other spots on the early web where drug discussions took place, Arrowwood rapidly became the most predominant, says Davis, differentiating Arrowwood from the others was a respect for information, which really did change the psychedelic subculture remarkably in the 90s and 2000s. Like the other subcultures in the early internet allowed people with previously niche interests to find another for the first time. Now the experience vaults are a fascinating record of human experience, incredibly valuable, Davis says. Davis and other Arrowwood's large-scale data-led approach made the website a useful repository for all sorts of toxic information, all sorts of information that would find their way into official assessments on toxicology, interactions between drugs, and even just molecular breakdowns of chemical compounds. Arrowwood really represents the spirit of a data nerd, a librarian with a lovely, dry, organized, clear information on the other hand, but also this sense of courage in creating an inventive space for culture generation, Davis says. It laid out a new model that demonstrated how respecting data and providing trustworthy sources could serve a role in harm reduction and support more community that can be very non-technical, crazy, and wild, he says. Yet Arrowwood was the first small, isolated community predominantly for data geeks and drug nerds. To the surprise of founders, wrote the Earth and Fire 10 respective in 2005. The daily visits to the website skyrocketed in 1,000 after she submitted Arrowwood for search engine listing, and the visits only snowballed from there. a short years no longer were psychedelic enthusiasts Arrowwood's main audience. It seemed anyone with a web connection and a microdose of curiosity was a potential visitor too, by becoming one of the predominant sources of drug information on experiences online. And 5 years after its launch, Arrowwood reached 100,000 page views per day. By the early 2000s, it was cited peer-reviewed journals. By 2014, 16 million people visited Arrowwood each year. Now, Arrowwood has 5,000 citations on Google Scholar, a repository for academic research with governmental agencies, law enforcement, medics, data scientists, anthropologists, chemists, historians, and scholars of digital culture, all taking a keen interest. Wow!
What a cool article. I've never heard of this site, but now I know what I'm doing this afternoon.
I'm going to Google it.
Right? Among Arrowwood's many citations are studies into effects of new research chemicals, the gray area legal designer drug that number in their thousands. Others investigate whether drugs might elicit the closest experience to a dreamlike state, or how to recreate the chemical induction of synesthesia, a neurological condition where our senses get mixed up and we can see noises or taste sound. And I have heard of that condition many years ago. Earth and Fire are even cited as co-authors of some of the research papers. Common to all these papers are those user-submitted reports in the Experience Vault. Unlike later internet fixtures such as social media, web forums, or Reddit, Arrowwood says these experiences are carefully curated by trained volunteers to comb through submissions, and researchers cite the platform's quality control as key factors for its usefulness. Researchers say that this process means Arrowwood's vaults are mostly stringently reviewed when compared to other websites, and although they are anecdotal, they provide a solid baseline reference for researchers. This makes it a rich seam to mine for phenomenological research in investigation of experience, according to Luke. It's massively utilized Arrowwood in my own research, says Luke, and I found it invaluable, especially at times where there were no researches other than the underground. That enabled a lot of science. Arrowwood's enormous collection of psychoactive experiences helped it become a point of reference for professionals of all stripes, not only academics. Physicians and doctors used Arrowwood, especially in treating patients who have used novel psychoactive substances, so-called research chemicals, that are yet to be regulated and can mystify due to their absence of literature. But some also worry about the kind of information available on Arrowwood, as it includes details on preparing and using drugs that could also be harmful. With the growth of online drug market, new entrants to the psychoactive pantheon are being created all the time. This means there's very little literature available on these compounds. So user experiences on Arrowwood can provide a helpful steer for medical professionals. Arrowwood is one of the few websites where emergency workers or doctors can find information on new substances, says Nicholas Laglitz, a professor of anthropology at New School for Social Research in New York City. Arrowwood serves as a substitute for scientific research, he says, adding that some scraps of toxicology data may be available elsewhere, but as far as effects on humans go, Arrowwood is a gold mine. This usefulness hasn't escaped authorities either. Policymakers such as the U.S. federal government's National Institute on Drug Abuse have tapped into Arrowwood as a data stream for spotting trends or patterns about the emergence of new drugs. The World Health Organization reads Irowid, as does the UK government, which cited the vaults on the harms of methoxamine and zopiclone. The U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration keeps an eye on Irowid as well, and has cited the Experience Vault in proposals to regulate new substances. A UK House of Lords committee report even cites an essay posted on Irowid about the psychoactive properties of nutmeg. Earth and Fire says Davis always had harm reduction in mind when he recalls Earth saying, in a weird way, we've wound up with the responsibility of doing something that in an ideal society the government would do. They take their responsibility very seriously, says Davis. Today, the psychedelic science industry reportedly worth $3 billion and it's only growing. A clinical research renaissance is currently underway into the powerful effects of hallucinogens like ketamine, DMT, magic mushrooms, and MDMA, exploring their potentials to treat afflictions like depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and addiction. Really, Lior Roseman, a senior lecturer and psychedelic researcher at Exeter University in the UK, it's this medicinalization. Medicalization of psychedelics that has allowed substances to become a conversation in every household and not just taboo. And before this medicalization could occur, Irowid was the beginning of the fringe having a voice, says Rossman. And that voice had an impact on education. So Irowid has been extremely valuable when it's when the psychedelic community started finding one another, he said. And so this small Web 1.0 side project that predated Wikipedia with its stubbornly retro aesthetics, unchanged for decades, and tiny co-chair of full-time staff brought psychonauts together, creating a whole new space. In doing so, it shifted the culture, played its part in legitimizing psychedelics in the eyes of a broader public, and has an outsized impact to this day. The courage that Earth and Fire had to move in public at the time of fear and suspicion in a dominant culture, we really went a major way towards destigmatizing the field of psychedelics, said Doblin. They had an incredible impact. And I think that's the end of the story.
Yeah, I closed it down because the other ones are short, but we're getting towards the end. So if you wanted to go and check that out, go check out BBBC.
Yeah.
I want to jump into these last two real quick because they're short.
Yeah.
So our next one comes manilatimes.net, and it states Clear Mind Medicine appoints Mary Elizabeth Clifford as Chief of Global Impact to advance U.S. partnerships and governmental engagement by Globe Newswire.
Yeah, so the Clear Mind Medicine Inc., a clinical biotech company focused on discovery and development of novel neuroplastogens-derived therapeutics to solve major undertreated health problems, today announced the appointment of Mary Elizabeth Gifford as Chief of Global Impact. In this role, Gifford will lead efforts to strengthen Clear Mind's U.S. partnership, governmental and regulatory agents advocacy, and strategic alliances in Washington, D.C. and New York, bridging research, regulation, and patient care to accelerate the advancements of innovative psychedelic medicines. Prior to joining Clear Mind, Gifford served as Chief of Global Impact at Cyanance Biomed, a NASDAQ-listed pharmaceutical company focused on nature-derived psychedelic medicine. She joined Fiance in 2020 from the Center for Body Mind Medicine, a Washington, D.C. based nonprofit where she led public policy. We are thrilled to welcome Mary Elizabeth Gifford to Clear Mind Medicine, said Dr. Adi Zulafshani, PhD, CEO of Clear Mind Medicine. Her unparalleled expertise in psychedelic policy and regulatory landscapes and longstanding collaboration with leading government officials, policymakers, and investor oriented to this space will be instrumental in advancing our U.S. partnerships and positioning Clear Mind as a leader in ethical, patient-centered psychedelic therapeutics. Gifford commented, "It's an honor to join Clear Mind Medicine, a psychedelic biopharma distinguished by its IP portfolio of 31 granted patents, with clinical trials underway at both Yale School of Medicine and Johns Hopkins University of Medicine, as well as Hadassah University Medical Center in Jerusalem and its scientific advisory board that includes faculty physicians from Harvard, Yale, and the University of Pennsylvania. Clear Mind aims to set the industry standard for scientific rigor and integrity," she continued. "I bring a deep appreciation for innovative Clear Mind leadership team and for CEO Zulafshani, whose entrepreneurial achievements at the intersection of medicine, commerce, and science to alleviate human suffering is inspiring."
Gifford serves pro bono as chair of the nonprofit Global Wellness Institute Psychedelics and Healing Initiative, whose honorary chair is Rick Doblin, founder of the MAPS Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, a trusted voice for mental health and psychedelic medicine in Capitol Hill and elsewhere. She was named a psychedelic titan, one of the psychedelic industry's most influential and impact individuals, by the news site Microdose. Spirituality and Health magazine describes Gifford as the most quietly influenced women working in psychedelics today. In May 2025, Gifford chaired the steering committee for the inaugural Fed Psychedelic Summit held at the National Press Club in Washington. She addressed the topic of the psychedelic business, ethics, and profit and purpose at Psychedelic Science 2025 in Denver. She is active with the Johns Hopkins Psychedelic Ethics Group and is member of the Institute of Medical Ethics. In July 2025, Mary Elizabeth became the sole biopharma executive selected to study alongside leading attorneys, physicians, researchers, and government officials at Harvard Law School's Psychedelic Policy and Long Immersion program. A graduate of Brown University, she also had a postgraduate year studying the history of mind-body medicine at Harvard. Clear Mind is a clinical stage psychedelic therapeutic biotech company focused on the discovery and development of novel psychedelic-derived therapeutics to solve widespread and underserved health problems, including alcohol use disorder. Its primary objective is research and develop psychedelic-based compounds and attempt to commercialize them as regulated medicine, foods, and supplements. The company's intellectual portfolio currently consists of 19 patent families, including 31 granted patents. The company intends to seek additional patents for its compounds wherever warranted and will remain opportunistic regarding the acquisition of additional intellectual property to build its portfolio. Shares of Clear Mind are listed under the CMND and the French stock under the CWIO. Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Good change. Yeah, good changes. Bet some big shit's coming.
Mm-hmm.
So our last article comes out of CatholicVote.org. Catholic Vote says Pennsylvania Diocese pays for clergy abuse supervisors psychedelic therapy. I just had a cookies mess it up. Survivors mushroom therapy, and it's doesn't say. Don't see where it's from.
At the top, Hannah Heister on October 27th of this year.
Okay.
Yeah. A Pennsylvania man who was molested by a priest 4 decades ago convinced the Diocese of Altoona Johnstown last year to pay for psilocybin therapy, which involved taking psychedelic mushrooms twice in an attempt to heal the trauma of his abuse. Portland news outlet Willamette Week reported that Chuck Lovett was sexually abused by Father Francis McCaw when he was around 12 years old. As an adult, he occasionally turned to talk therapy and acupuncture, but discovered psychedelics as a new option after reading a book on the subject in 2018. In 2019, the diocese offered him restitution for the abuse, $10,000 to use for therapy within 10 years. Lovett decided he wanted to use the money for psilocybin therapy in Oregon since the procedure is illegal in Pennsylvania. The diocese initially deferred his request for it to cover the therapy and told him he needed a referral form from the in-state licensed therapist, according to WW. 2 therapists refused to recommend psychedelics to Lovett. Lovett finally sent an email to Gene Johnston, the diocese victim assistance coordinator, threatening to go through with the treatment anyways and take his story public. I did not choose to be sexually abused within the Catholic Church, but I am choosing to receive this therapy to heal from it, he repeatedly wrote. According to WW, the diocese responded within a half hour and gave him permission to spend $6,000 on psychedelics. Lovett underwent the procedure during a 4-day psilocybin retreat in Oregon after the psychedelics made him relive and process the trauma of his abuse. He said he saw himself as a feather floating through the air, and added, the weight was off my shoulders. He told WW, it was a beautiful, warm experience. I felt like the universe had me in its hands. According to the outlet, Lovett now thinks other survivors of clergy sexual abuse should try psychedelics to heal their wounds. WW reported that Johnston called the diocese coverage of psychedelics a one-time exception, saying that the diocese support traditional counseling therapy as a first response when victims come forward to report their trauma and abuse. Catholic Vote previously reported that the church teaches mind-altering drugs like marijuana and psychedelic mushrooms hinder access to truth and ultimately to God himself.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, it's cool that they actually covered it finally, because again, it should be his choice, not theirs. They don't get to decide. They're not doctors. Yeah. So
other people asking for millions. He's asking for therapy, but I mean, some of those lessons go to $6,000, like a session, like in certain states.
Yeah, I mean, $10,000 is really nothing in the grand scheme of things for therapy. I mean, that man should be entitled to way more. He didn't choose what happened to him in any way, and if it takes millions to heal him, then so be it. That's the way the cookie crumbles. But I'm glad that he got the treatment and he seems to be benefiting from it. And that should speak volumes to all of those medical professionals out there that didn't help him, that maybe next time they have a patient like him in their office, they'll consider that as an alternative treatment for their patient.
Amen.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for joining us here on Psychedelic Reporters on NOK Network and for tuning in to our video podcast on NOK Network's Rumble and YouTube pages, as well as our social media sites.
That's right, folks. We hope you enjoyed your update today of mainstream media coverage of psychedelic medicine advancements from around the globe.
Many thanks to our sponsors and to my joint hosts, Tara Simpsons. Welcome back, by the way. Oh, man. It's great to have you. And to Bufo Various for choosing the stories. And to you, our listeners, for joining each week on Psychedelic Tuesday. Let's hear from Dead Ringer again from Kirkland Lake on our way out.
Looking at myself, reflections of my mind. It's just the kind of day to leave myself behind. So gently swaying through the fairyland of love. If you'll just come with me, you'll see the beauty of